Alright, now that we've mastered our basic bowl techniques, we can move on to other types of construction. What we'll work with in this tutorial are slab constructions, as well as using a bowl itself. Alright, so this is a candle holder that we'll be making, and this is just the basic form right here. We'll add more ornamentation and more personalization to it later. Okay, so to make this basic shape, you'll need two of these sticks. These are going to act as guidelines when you're rolling out the slab. The sticks are about 1/2 inch wide, and they'll get you started to make everything even and uniform. The other thing that you'll need is a rolling pin, maybe some of these cookie cutters, and a few other clay tools that we've had around, you know, the various things that we use. In addition, you'll also need a piece of paper or two. Alright, so starting with the clay. You'll need about twice as much clay as you'd make for one of those cups or bowls that you've been making. We'll just put it down here and we'll start to roll it out. The thing about rolling out a slab of clay is that you want to keep lifting it and straightening it as you roll it. Because otherwise what will happen is that this moisture will build up and it will stick. Once you've rolled it out as flat as it can be between the two sticks, you're going to want to take the sticks away and roll it freehand. The thing about this is you'll just give it smooth, even pressure. We want it to be about half as thick as what it is now. So to make it half as thick, we'll just make it twice as long. That's how we'll know. So when you're rolling, keep flipping it over and apply even pressure. Don't try and do it all at once, because otherwise you're going to get low and high spots. Just nice and even pressure. It'll take several times, but that's okay. Okay, so I have a piece now that's about twice as long as it was, which means it's got to be about half as thick. I've lifted it off the table so that it's not going to stick from the last time that I rolled it, and I'll probably just use something like this butter knife here to smooth it out a little bit, because you can see it's got some stress going on in the texture. Don't add very much water, if any at all, because we don't want this clay to be really wet. If it's too wet, it's going to be really difficult to work with. Please note that because I rolled it out very smoothly, not trying to do it all at once, that the thickness is pretty consistent throughout. Now I'm going to trim it this way. So what I'm going to do is take one of these pieces and put it right on the edge here, just enough to trim off the end. Now remember, always use the back of a butter knife if you're using a butter knife to cut. A wooden tool would work just as well. I might sometimes even dip the tool into a little bit of water if I needed to make it cut more easily. But careful, we don't want to use a lot of water with this project, and you'll see why here in just a few minutes. I'm going to take any scraps and just put them aside. Now, I could just eyeball this, but if I wanted to measure it, I might take a piece of paper like this and fold it in half. I could then use this as a guide. Next, My cylinder that I was using to roll this out might have taken on a little bit of moisture from the clay, so I'm going to use a different cylinder now, one that's nice and dry. I'm going to take another piece of paper, and I'm just going to roll it over it. And I'm going to secure it with just one little piece of tape. I highly recommend you don't use too much tape. Just one little piece. That will do. Just as little as possible. Then what I'll do is I'll take and using that original piece of paper that I used to find the width of it, I'll use it now as a guide to cut really straight. A nice 90-degree angle on that. When I cut, I usually come in from both directions. That way it won't pull the clay down in one direction. All my scraps I'm putting together in one nice pile, crushing them together as soon as I make them. That way the clay is going to stay moist, and you'll see why that's important here in just a few minutes. Next, I'll tape this tube with the paper, and I'm going to use it to measure how long I need it to be. So right where that fold is, I'll put that right on this edge right here, and I'll roll it one time. And when the fold meets the clay again, I know that's how long I need it to be. And I'll mark it right there. I can use that same piece of paper again to get that nice and straight. I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to put it aside. Be gentle with it. You know how to handle clay at this point. The rest of these pieces, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to crumple them all up. They should still be pretty moist. Okay, now you've worked with clay enough now to learn this. To recycle the clay, what you want to do, and this clay should be nice and moist still, is we want to wedge it. If it was drier, we might add some water, but we'll do that another time. When you wedge it, you want to just have it rolled up into a ball, scrunched up, and then you want to push it down with your palms. You'll probably want to stand when you do this. Now, if you've baked before, you probably know that when you knead bread, you usually go out like that. But we don't want to go out. We want to just go down. And it's going to collect itself. You see I'm pushing it in here, down. It's going to collect itself into a nice little roll. I want to keep pushing this way, otherwise it's going to stretch out this way. If I'm doing it right, it's going to make like a little face, like a little monkey face. You want to do this many times, maybe about 30, 40 times at least. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can see air bubbles coming to the surface as you do it. Okay, I've wedged this now more than 50 times, and so then I'll just finish it off by rolling that edge in, and I've got this nice little ball of clay, and it's consistent throughout. Okay, so with this I can make the bottom. I'm judging that maybe this is a little bit too much clay. I don't think I'll need that much. And your experience should have shown you that having too much clay is not a good thing. In fact, it makes it a lot more difficult. So I'm going to take, let's see here. I'm going to nip off about this much of it. So this is just extra. Put it aside. And so now I've got this nice little ball of clay about the size of my palm. And you know how to make a bowl. So what we want to do is we're going to make a bowl that's sort of wide and flat. So now I've got a wide flat bowl that's going to be the size of one of these tubes. You see how this just fits in there just right. I can even use that as a guide at the very end here just to get that just right. If this end isn't sort of even, then you might want to take the time to even it out a little bit. Since this isn't a cup or a bowl, it's just the basis for our candle holder, I'm not going to require a footer on this one. Okay, so I've got the base. That is a bowl, right? So it's a good thing we learned about bowls. And I've got this slab, fairly thin, not too skinny, otherwise it's going to be hard to work with, but fairly thin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine these two. So, well, I've got this bowl right here. I might as well score it, because you know whenever we attach something, we score it real good. Okay, and so now with our tube that has the paper on it, we're going to go ahead and wrap this around the tube. So the only thing you want to be careful is you don't want seams on seams. So I wouldn't put this right on the edge. You might be tempted to, but don't. Okay, so there I have it. Just very gently rolling that up around my tube. And make sure that you get it to the bottom. You don't want this to be sticking out like this. That's definitely a no-no. In fact, if it was even a little bit in, right there, you can't really see it, but if it was even, the tube was a little bit in, that wouldn't be so bad. Okay. So, but basically flush with the bottom is good. Okay, those two ends should come together. Now, mine didn't stretch quite far enough. I didn't cut it quite big enough. That's okay. Or maybe yours is too big. If it's too big, you can just cut off that little bit of extra. Just be careful about it. If it's too small, that's really easy to fix. All I'm going to have to do is take this off. And even just in the act of taking that off and putting it back on, we'll stretch it out quite a bit. You see it's getting closer? So now, if I just maybe go around, just giving it slightest amount of pressure, you'll see that that's going to stretch that out. Okay, and I'm going to take that off again, put it back on again, gently, gently, until that stretches out enough. Oh, and you can see, look, see, it's just come together, just like that. And that's what you want, the two ends to come together. You don't want them to overlap. Okay, so with these two ends, of course, I'm going to score. Now, you don't want to get much water on everything because of this paper. That's one of the reasons why we want to keep things very dry. So I've scored this end, and I'll score this end as well. Okay, and then I want those ends to just come together like this. So the bottom edges are coming together right there. And I'm just rolling them over until that seam comes together, end to end. end to end, not one on top of the other. Okay, now if you'll remember when you were making the piggy bank and you were putting the things together, we stitched across to make sure that those two halves came together really well. I can do the same thing here. You see, all the techniques just build on each other, one thing after another after another. And what you learn in one is going to help you with another. Once I've done that, made it nice and ugly, go nice and deep, then it's really easy just to smooth that out and really join that as one piece. I think what I'll do too is I've got some stress on the clay. You see all the little marks, is I'm going to take the time right now to smooth those off. So the easiest thing for me to do is just to put this down and come up the sides just like that, nice and gentle. Remember, little or no water is probably the best thing right now because we don't want to get that paper soaked out. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We want this nice and smooth now because now's the easiest time to smooth it. Alrighty, all I have to do then is go ahead and score across there. And you'll see how this tube is free to move because we've got that paper sleeve on there. Scoring real good. See, I don't have much in the way of paper sticking out there. Okay, well now the rest is pretty easy. I'll just take this and join these two. So making sure that they line up in the bottom. You could even take that tube and push it down just a little bit to make sure that everything is lined up. But be careful, because what you really don't want to do is you don't want to be pushing it into the bottom and making a crease on the inside. So just a little bit, just so that you know that everything is lined up. And that's feeling pretty good. So I can give it just my little wiggle, little wiggle, little wiggle and a push. Okay, and so then I could take and I could just score across here. See, just like so. Now it's really important to do this all in one period because the thing is that as you know by now that the clay will shrink when it dries. So you got to kind of hustle on this part because we want to be able to pull this tube out before the end of the period. And then we can let our work dry a little bit and it'll be all ready to sort of refine and decorate and make it a little bit more personal. So you can see now where I've scored it, I'm just taking and smoothing that up. Okay, so good enough. Once again, I'm looking for a little bit of speed, not perfection. Once the blank is made, then we can worry about making everything perfect. But we want to get this all done, one period. Okay, so now for the decorations. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark off, let's say, dividing this evenly into 4. So maybe right here, there's a mark, and then I'll turn this totally the other way and finding the other end. Okay, for me, I gotta look this way. And so here is a mark. And then if I turn it here, a mark. Because I've found that about 4 of the cutouts is good. You might be able to do 5. 5 might be as well too, but 5 is not going to be as easy as 4 because 4 we can just go straight across each way. Okay, so that's the placement around. Now about the height. Let's just check that. So I'll get my pencil nice and steady. I'll say like, okay, there's the one. There's the other right there. There's the other right there. and the last one right there. So that's how I'll know that they're about the same height. I think I'm going to use the Christmas tree once again for my bottom, but I used the star last time. Maybe I'll use this little ornament this time. Alright, with the Christmas tree, what I'll do is first off make sure that it's pretty clean. If it's not clean, you'll want to wash it off. I find that one of these paintbrushes works really good for cleaning out all the old clay that somebody else might have left in there. Okay, so nice and clean. Get rid of any extra moisture because once again we don't want things to get too wet. And then I can just line this up just like so. Nice and straight, just the way I want it. And then when I push it in, if I give it a little rock back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, see what that will do is that way it will go around the curve here, right, and cut through all the way. You'll feel it when it's nice and solid. Okay, and that way it should come out nice and clean. Oh, wouldn't you know it? Let's see if I can't get that out still clean. Oh no. Well, that'll find how do you do. Alrighty. Well, as much as I'd like to edit that out, I think I'll leave that because you saw how I struggled with it a little bit, but I just used the pencil at first to get underneath there, then the knife, and just carefully worked it out. So in the end, it's just fine. Did come out clean after all. There might have been too much water on it. Let's try. Hopefully this one will work out better. Almost. There we go. See, as long as it's cut through, it should come out, even if it's not coming out as nicely as it was doing for me earlier today. So you see how I'm using my mark here to get those trees all even. And I think that will be nicer than if they were just randomly put. But then again, you do you. You do it however you want. Now, something like this here that didn't come out too clean, either I could take the time to try and dig it out, or just leave it, because when this is all dry and not so flimsy, then it'll be a lot easier to get stuff like that out. I'll just put this one in between the trees. All right, once again, if it doesn't come out, it might be better to leave it in and get it out later when things are a little bit stiffer. All right, let me see. I want to check the height on that, otherwise it's going to get all crazy. So maybe I'll just use something to measure. So you see I've got my knife right here, and I'm putting my pencil next to it. Okay, and I say like, okay, that is how high it is right there. So if I go to the next one, where I'd put the next one, I can just put a dot. And so then I know that that's going to be the right height. There we go. Right there. Fill that in a little bit. Good enough. Okay, that worked out pretty good. Now it's tempting to put more decorations on here, like if I could fit a star. You know, I might be able to do that. The problem is that it can get very skinny here. Very skinny indeed. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to go for it. Let's see. But first, before I do, let's see here. Is that going to fit everywhere? Well, I know one would fit there. Do I know that one would fit here? Ooh, boy, it's tempting. It's tempting. I think, I think I'm going to go for it. What the heck? It's probably living dangerously, but, you know, got to do it sometimes. See, be careful. You see how skinny this is getting? That's going to be hard for it to maintain its structure. Now, as long as everything comes out okay, we'll be all right. But otherwise, I might have just wrecked my work. And you know, here's the other thing too. You know how I was stressing you about getting this all done in one period? Maybe you attempt it one period and it works, and that's great. Maybe if it doesn't, you know, just the clay is easily recyclable. Just crumple up what you've got, put the clay back, and try again the next day. You'll just be that much better at it. Yeah, this is pretty dangerous because that's very, very skinny right there. Too skinny, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky. See, does this all look good here? Maybe take just a moment to smooth this off while I still have that tube in there. And I still have, oh, let's say 10 minutes before the end of class. And it's time for cleanup. I have just the moment. Might as well take that moment and get it all good. Okay, so I've got that out and I'm done. Basically, what I would do now is I would just maybe wrap it very, very lightly in a bag. Depends, you know, if it's the weekend, maybe wrap it a little bit more so. But this tube has got to be removed from this altogether before you're done. The paper itself, I wouldn't worry about. I would just leave that in. And that way, if we ever need to reinsert the tube, if it has not shrunken up too much, we'll be able to do that. And it will definitely be much easier to take the paper out once this is dried a little bit. And this way also, by not trying to mess with that paper, not trying to mess with it any more than this, you're done. Go do something else at this point. And let it firm up a little bit because right now it's perfectly round and we want it to stay perfectly round because we don't want things to be hard. We want things to be easy. Okay, well, good luck.